So let's go to the first slide. Use video for better experience. It's not too late to invite people. Use the chat to share and for Q&A. If you're new to Movement Voter Project, welcome. You can visit movement.vote for more issue. We usually have closed captioning, but it's 2020, so enough said. And just huge thank you to everyone for being here. And let's go to the next slide. So, I actually asked that we just put the slide in a couple minutes ago because this is one of the coolest new things at Movement Voter Project that people can do right now while you're listening. If you're feeling antsy and want to do something right now, we're going to put in the chat the link to basically make it really easy to be an MVP donor organizer. It's our new grassroots donor organizing program. You're going to hear about it at the end, but I'd love for people to just start testing it out and playing with it because, you know, a lot of people have been organizing house parties, so many incredible house parties. And this is an even easier first step for people. Anyway, just check it out. And yes, this is actually good question. The money goes to PAC. Thank you. Yeah, we have lots of great people in the chat to answer questions. So great. So let's go on to the agenda. And welcome everyone who's just getting in, who had trouble getting in before. I'm sorry, it was artificially capped at 99 people. And this is an amazing call because I think we had the most RSVPs ever, over 450 RSVPs. So we're on our way to having the biggest call ever for the most important thing in our lives. And I'm gonna be quick. I want you to hear from all our incredible team members and everyone you're gonna hear from. Sally asks, where's the link to invite folks? Ah, someone can put it in the chat. So welcome everyone. I'm Billy Wimsatt. I am honored to be the executive director of Movement Voter Project, and happy National Voter Registration Day today. It is September 22nd, National Voter Registration Day, and it is also Election Day all over the country. Happy Election Day, everyone. It's not in 40 some days. It is today. People are voting all over the country today. All of our groups are working with people to get their ballots in, getting registered and voting in person, by mail, all over the country. It's happening. It's right now. GOTV is every day now. And the punchline I know a lot of people are asking is like, okay, I want to move some last minute money. I moved as much as I possibly could, but now I have to move more because Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the future of the world. Where is it most needed? You know, we get this question all the time, like what state is it most needed? What groups are most needed? And we have a dashboard that our Myrna and our state advisors are keeping up every day, tracking the gaps in all the states. And 3 months ago, if you were moving, like, you know, let's say someone's like, I want to move 100,000. Where is the most strategic set of places to move it to? We would have made a whole docket for them and said, yeah, like this group needs $5,000 to, you know, get access to a tool, and this group needs $35,000, you know, to hire a staff person through the election. And we have this whole complicated process of supporting donors to fund exactly what they want to fund, exactly where they fund. And right now, what we're telling people is like, we can do that for you, like way in advance of the next election. Right now, we just need you to give money, and we are like switchboard operators. We're moving it as fast as we can to exactly where it needs to go. You can move it directly to groups if you want. If you're moving, you know, not huge amounts of money, you can just donate online. If you're moving larger amounts to save the transaction costs, you can give directly to the biggest priority is Movement Voter PAC. which you have to be disclosed. Your name is disclosed. If you're not comfortable having your name disclosed, the second biggest priority is to give to the C4. And a lot of groups still need C3 money. You can talk to our advisors who can make referrals about that. But that's the quick and dirty on that. And let's go to the next slide. Okay. I'm going to ask that we take a moment of silence. Oh, God. Yeah. Thank you, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for everything that you've done for all of us. And we are here to carry on your legacy. And that's our job. So, yeah. So I think I wrote out, I can't talk about this because I'm going to cry. We wrote out our strategy in that email we sent. The strategy is the same. The tactics are evolving by the day and by the hour. We're talking with lots and lots of local partners, national partners about all the things we can do. We'll keep you updated as our strategy evolves. The top line is we have to fight for the Senate just as hard as we're fighting for the presidential. So you're going to hear about that later. But thank you, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for surviving as long as you did, so we can have this fight and fight to replace your seat properly, not have it rammed through by someone who's trying to grab power. So let's go to the next slide, please. So I want to share some good news. We set a goal to raise 30 million and we met it. Then we set a goal to raise 50 million and we met it. And then we set a goal to raise 75 million. And as of this week, we have met that goal and are very close to that 75 million actually being out in the field. So we want to celebrate that. We have to celebrate every victory that we have along the way, and just want to take a moment to just appreciate everyone who made that happen. You know, from all of our incredible partners, Solid Air. Well, everyone had their own goals, but you know, Solid Air, Working Families Party, Way to Win. You know, Women Donors Network, everyone, we're all in this together. We're all raising money together. And all of our grassroots, you know, partners, like, you know, Airlift and Walk the Walk and, you know, Flip the Vote and Force Multiplier and all the local MVP teams all over the country, that organized, you know, so hard, that have had, you know, Western Mass and Eastern Mass and New York and DC and Chicago and Seattle and the Bay and LA, and all of you out there dealing with wildfires and smoke and still organizing, you know, and okay. As fast as I can. Okay. Ooh, let's mute everyone. You know, and I mean, just seeing the fires and the smoke out west, it's like the world and the future of the world really is being decided right now. And I'm just so grateful we're a community, we're all in this together, and I'm going to let you hear from our incredible organizers, you know, and team members, and there's so many people behind the scenes doing the operations, doing the grant making, and all of the behind the scenes capacity building and partnerships work and support to make this happen. And so we have set a new goal, 100 million. That's pretty close to that would be, you know, covering most of the remaining gaps that we're tracking on our dashboard. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. And with that, I'm going to pass it to our amazing comms director, Elizabeth Fernandez, who made this slide presentation. And she's going to take it from here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much, Billy. Yeah, it's been a really emotional week and weekend for a lot of us. Let's talk about vote by mail. Already people have been blowing up the chat, asking questions. Well, you know, we've got Jillian, who's our North Carolina state advisor, who has quickly become an expert as she's had to be, because North Carolina is the first in the nation to actually start voting, and ballots have been going out since September 4th. So they've already got the experience before anybody else in the country did. I'm really, really excited about what Jillian has to say, and she's really going to talk about what our partners on the ground are doing to help make sure vote by mail is as successful as possible. And Jillian, I'll pass it along to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about what is happening right now in North Carolina with vote by mail, and then dig in a little deeper to what some of our partners are doing to get out the vote in different communities around the state. Unfortunately, I have another commitment at 2, so I'm not going to be able to stay for the Q&A, but please feel free, if you have any questions about North Carolina, to get in touch with me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about our groups or about the state of play in the state in general. So for the last 10 years or so, North Carolina has been dealing with the significant imposition of voter suppression and gerrymandering by our Republican-controlled state legislature. But this year, we were able to win a partial victory on vote by mail. So prior to this year, voters had to have a reason to vote absentee. Like you had to certify that you were unable to come to the polls, you were out of the country, you know, you were sick, whatever. And the ballot also required that 2 people sign as witnesses. So you had to have 2 adults in your home or, you know, somewhere who could sign as a witness, 18 years or older. Of course, with COVID, you know, there aren't a lot of people who have 2 other adults in their home. And it's not really safe to go out and, you know, be close to folks and sign ballots. And of course, we, you know, wanted everyone to have the opportunity to vote absentee because we want people to be able to vote safely. So our state legislature passed a law that allows anybody to vote by mail, reduce the number of witnesses to 1, and now allows voters to either mail in their ballots or turn in a completed ballot at any county board of elections office or any early voting site. So people who were concerned about sending their ballots to the mail can go turn them in person, and most county boards of election are setting up outdoor COVID safe places to do that, just under tents with staff. And we also implemented an online ballot tracking system so that anybody can log in and see the status of their ballot, if it's been accepted or rejected, and what's going on. Unfortunately, one of the major innovations that was requested by our voter groups, which was that the county boards of election just be allowed to send everybody an absentee ballot without having to request one, was rejected by the Republican-controlled state legislature. So it's still a 2-step process, which we're concerned is going to reduce access. And so it's more important than ever that we fund our grassroots groups who are getting out the vote and who are informing people about how they can vote this year. So MVP is funding 31 organizations in North Carolina. We have the opportunity this year to flip both houses of our state legislature, send a Democrat to the U.S. Senate, and of course be on the side of sending Joe Biden to the White House. At the end of last week, about 124,000 North Carolinians have submitted a ballot. So our voter turnout so far is about 2%. Almost 1 million people have requested a ballot, and Democrats are ahead of Republicans in both voting and ballot requests at a rate of 3-1. A number of our partners are putting together a massive voter defense project that would set up voter welcome centers at polling places around the state. And these would be volunteer staffed, making sure that voters are able to vote, stay on the lookout for any voter suppression or unfair or illegal practices, make sure that people aren't being intimidated at the polls, which is unfortunately a concern here in some areas of the state, particularly where racial justice fights have sprung up in the last couple of years and have provoked this kind of, racist backlash in a number of North Carolina counties. Unfortunately, we're also seeing a racial disparity in ballot rejection. Absentee ballots from African-American voters are being rejected at nearly triple the rate as those from white voters. And the state Democratic Party and campaign arms of the National Party also actually has recently filed a lawsuit claiming that our rules around absentee balloting are effectively disenfranchising voters who may make a mistake on their ballot. So if you, for example, the most common reason for rejected ballots right now is that a witness doesn't fill out all of the required information, and that causes your ballot to be rejected. You have to do it again, and a lot of people won't do it again, or will end up putting it in the mail too late for it to be counted. So we're watching that lawsuit pretty closely. Hopefully it'll be able to make a difference, make some changes with how we're doing things. The three big pots of work that MVP is funding and that are moving in North Carolina right now are mobilizing Black voters, our Black electorate, harnessing the strength of our rising Latinx electorate, and organizing across the rural-urban divide. And I'm going to talk a little bit about an organization working in each of those areas. Black voters have been explicitly targeted by gerrymandering and voter suppression laws in North Carolina. In fact, one of the court rulings invalidating this like omnibus voter suppression bill that passed in 2013, the court ruling said that it targeted Black voters with surgical precision, doing things like eliminating Sunday voting so that souls to the polls events were no longer possible, eliminating same-day registration, pre-registration for youth, all of these things that people had fought for in this state for decades to make voting easier, our Republican-controlled legislature had rolled back. And so one of our partners, a group called Advanced Carolina, is doing a project to send PPE voter kits to Black voters around the state, partnering with churches and community organizations. That will include like a mask, hand sanitizer, gloves, and voting information so that people can feel safe and empowered going to vote. And that's about $1 million project. And it's almost fully funded. They've just got a couple $100,000 to go to be able to reach everyone that they're trying to reach. Another huge piece of what we're doing in North Carolina is trying to harness our rising Latinx electorate. North Carolina's Latinx population quadrupled between 1990 and 2000. And so now 20 years on, we have a lot of US citizen first generation kids who are eligible to vote and who are getting involved for the first time in our political process. And so there are 4 organizations in North Carolina that MVP has funded that are Latinx C4 groups who are all working together on a Latinx voter engagement project, and they're sending out their materials in the form of Loteria cards, which I just learned what this is, but it's like a Mexican card game, kind of like bingo, and the cards are really distinctive. They have these really bright, colorful pictures, and it might say like El Arbol and have a picture of a tree. So instead it's like Cal Cunningham, and has a picture of Cal Cunningham and information about getting people out to vote, so that when people go to their mailboxes, they see this familiar style of image, and they're more likely to pick it up and read it. So that's been really exciting. They're also working on an online website called Votemos en Sí, which has all the voter information that you need in Spanish to engage Spanish language voters. And then finally, we have a couple of groups that we fund who are working really hard to organize across the rural-urban divide in North Carolina. We have, like most states, we have most left-leaning voters live in cities, and we have these rural areas that tend to be more right-leaning. But it's clear to us that if we want to win back our state, we need to be organizing not just in cities, but also in rural communities and small towns all over the state. And so MVP partners are organizing in over 20 rural counties around the state where there are competitive state House and state Senate districts. And 2 of our partners are really leading the efforts there, a group called Carolina Federation, which is a coalition of independent political organizations in different rural counties and urban counties, including Durham, Forsyth, Guilford, and New Hanover, which have very, very different voter profiles, but all have really important races or are really important for statewide turnout. And then finally, a group called Down Home, which works primarily in small towns and rural areas, doing get out the vote, doing rural organizing and mobilizing, which is really important for the future of our state. We need to make sure that we're reaching out to people all over the state and not just in the urban centers where our efforts are the strongest. Finally, the voter engagement, the voter protection project that that's being kicked off in North Carolina now is $1 million project. It's brand new. There are 4 organizations, all of which are MVP partners who are leading this off. And there's a huge funding gap because this need kind of just arose within the community, people thinking more and more about how we need to do voter defense. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity for MVP to help fund that program. I think it's going to make a huge difference with people being able to have their vote counted and to really deal with the issue of people knowing how to fill out their ballot so that their ballot gets accepted for the first time so that they know what to do. A huge part of voter suppression in North Carolina has been by confusion, changing the rules every election. Do you need an ID? Do you not need an ID? Can I vote here? Can I pre-register? Can I register same day? No one has really known what's going on. And so these efforts to get out the vote and also to provide people with accurate information have been really critical to making sure that people can vote, safely in our state and that they can have their voices heard. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate all of your support. And please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I see a question in the chat about the name of the organizations for protecting the vote. The two big ones that are organizing it are the You Can Vote and North Carolina Black Alliance, which is the partner of Advanced Carolina, the C4 organization that I told you about, and they're bringing in other partners like our C3 table and some of the Latinx groups to try to reach the whole state. I'm going to check the chat for other questions really quick before I hop off. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time, and I'm going to pass it back over to Elizabeth.
Hi, sorry about that. I got muted for a moment. Thank you, Jillian. That is amazing. That is hopeful. I really especially love the creative work happening. And I'm going to shift it over to Florida. I am a native Floridian. I love my state, though it breaks my heart all the time. And I am really excited to talk about what we're doing to change Florida forever. We have such an exciting speaker, Desmond Meade, the president of the Florida Rights Restoration Committee Coalition. In 2018, Floridians overwhelmingly passed Amendment 4 to restore the right to vote to 1.4 million returning citizens. It has been a battle since then with the Florida legislature and the courts doing everything they can to stop it, instituting poll taxes. But you know, Desmond is a true hero and has done so much amazing work on this. And he's going to be speaking along with Eric, who is our Florida State Advisor. And I will pass it along to you all.
Desmond.
Hey. All right. Is my camera working?
It is.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. You want me to go first, Eric?
Yes.
Okay, great. You know, I kind of, so first of all, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Desmond Meade. I am the executive director of Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. And I definitely want to applaud whoever that person was that titled our section Changing Florida Forever, because that's exactly the work that we're engaged in. My organization, for those who do not know, is comprised of people who have previous felony convictions. And for years, we've been working on specifically on changing Florida disenfranchisement policies. The issue of felon disenfranchisement date back many years, and we've seen its emergence during the Reconstruction era. Once the slaves were freed, folks had to try to figure out a way to strip newly freed slaves of this newfound power of exercising their right in the democracy by voting. And one of the ways that they used was to criminalize things that slaves were more likely to do and use that as a pretext to strip them of the right to vote. This policy has been in place for Florida over 150 years. And during that time frame, if anyone convicted of a felony offense was convicted of a felony offense, they would actually lose the right to vote for life. But Amendment 4 changed that, right? Like Elizabeth said, you know, voters overwhelmingly passed Amendment 4 November of 2018, over 5.1 million voters that voted for second chances, and 1.4 million Floridians had a pathway to be able to register to vote and participate in elections. We've seen since that passage that there've been a concentrated effort to minimize the impact of Amendment 4. But now that wait, let me think about it. Stop for a second. What we're doing is not just changing Florida forever. What we're doing is actually going to change the world forever, because I'm bold enough to say that whatever happens in Florida has an impact on this country and this world. And if you don't believe me, you can go all the way back to 2000 election, Bush Gore, where less than 600 votes decided the presidency. And I'm looking around, and most of you guys, I think around my age, it's hard for me to remember the last time somebody got into the White House without winning the state of Florida, right? And we've known that ever since Bush Gore. On average, presidential elections are decided by 100,000 votes. And so this work that we're doing, that FRC is doing to re-enfranchise the 1.4 million, not only has the potential to change Florida, which I believe it is already starting to change Florida, but it does impact the rest of this country, and it does impact the world. Now, we have some folks that are putting up roadblocks with these fines and fees and creating these obstacles to prevent many of the 1.4 million from being able to vote. But I'm here this morning not to give you a sob story and not to get you depressed or get you angry, but to get you excited and motivated to continue to support the work that's going on in Florida, because we are creating a way out of no way. Where other people may see obstacles, we see opportunities. We created the Fines and Fees Fund to specifically address these individuals who may have outstanding fines and fees. And we've raised millions of dollars, and we've paid out millions of dollars, and we're going to continue to do so in these next couple of weeks leading up to our registration deadline. But there's also another brighter spot to this story, and that is, and you all who are good with math could see this. Amendment 4 re-enfranchised 1.4 million Floridians. We know that 774,000 individuals have fines and fees. When you do that math, that leaves 700,000 returning citizens that have the opportunity to register to vote right now today without having to pay a penny, right? And these people are out in our communities, and we're doing all that we can to reach as many of them as possible. And what we do know is even with that group right there, that's more than enough to cover the gap that we have seen historically in the state of Florida. And if we're able to engage these returning citizens and their family members, then we're able to have a distinct and direct impact on the outcome of this presidential election, as well as set the framework or the groundwork to bring about a whole new regime in 2022 in the state of Florida, where we'll be able to bring in people that value people's lives more than our current governor does. But with all that being said, and there's so many possibilities of the work that we're doing and the impact of our work, what I can't escape, what I can't run away from when I go to bed at night, when I went to bed last night, and I'm tossing and turning, the one thing that I couldn't shake out of my mind was the story of this young lady who just a few weeks ago, a returning citizen, never thought that she'll be able to vote again. And as our canvassers was canvassing her community, this young lady found out through her doctor that she has less than 6 months to live. And as we were helping her fill out her voter registration form, she started crying, right? And she thought that she was saying how for 24 years she'd been trying to vote, but because of a drug addiction, because of her felony convictions, she never think this day would be possible. And as she signed her name on that dotted line on that voter registration form, she looked up and she asked our canvassers to pray that God would let her live long enough for her to be able to cast a ballot. You know, her story is indicative of so many stories throughout the state of Florida, but it took a tragic turn because just last week they had to put her in hospice and she passed away. She died before getting an opportunity to experience what she's been yearning for over 24 years. So in spite of all of the great things that I know that we can do with the work that we're doing in Florida, I think the most important thing is that it's changing people's lives. It's giving communities that have been marginalized through systemic racism, has been marginalized through gentrification, that's been marginalized through all kinds of discrimination based on the color of their skin and their sexual identity and their immigration status, is giving these communities the most powerful weapon that we can ever have, and that's hope. That's hope. Hope for a better future, hope for a better democracy. And that is what we're concentrating on. And so I want to leave with that because I don't want to take up Eric's time, but I know that yes, we can transform the state of Florida. Yes, we can transform this country, but more importantly, we can transform lives. And that's what sits at the center of the work that we do at Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Desmond. And it's an honor to have leaders like Desmond in the state of Florida. This is how we are changing Florida, is through the leadership that Desmond and so many others are exhibiting. Desmond did something in passing Amendment 4 that no one in Florida, including me, at first thought was going to be possible. And it's through his vision, through his persistence, that 1.4 million people have this new opportunity to be re-enfranchised and to become a part of our democracy. As he said, as we do that, and this is a very big project right now, but it's going to extend beyond this election. It's going to extend for many, many years to fully build, returning citizens who've been cast away from society into a powerful voting bloc that will swing and really determine the future of the state. I do want to say that a lot of people right now around the country are really worried about what happens on election night, and this whole idea about Trump winning on election night, but then vote by mail ballots coming in later. Well, Florida, because of the way Florida vote by mail is set up, all the votes are going to be counted on election night. We are going to know probably, if we are not in recount territory like 2000, who won Florida by the 11 o'clock news. There are forecasters that I follow, looking at the election, and one of them wrote on Twitter recently, if Trump is defeated in Florida, he has less than a 5% chance of winning the presidency. If he wins in Florida, he is a favorite. Trump and his campaign know that they have no path to winning. In fact, no Republican in the country has a path to winning if they don't win Florida. Democrats, have other ways to get in that map, but it's a long shot. It's a longer shot for them. So if we change Florida, if Florida goes in the direction of a Virginia, of a Colorado, of a Nevada, then the whole landscape has changed in this country about what we can imagine possible in our national politics. And we're going to permanently change this country. And as Desmond said, when we change this country, we change the world. So really thank you to everyone who's been contributing to the work of Desmond and so many others in this state. Please continue to do everything you can. We know with the news of last week, we know the news is happening every minute, that there is no more important time in any of our lives than right now. And really just want to be thankful. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much, Desmond. Oh God, Thomas says I wouldn't cry on this call. This is really the kind of powerful, world-changing work that is being done and being led by the most impacted people. And to me, that is one of the most amazing and powerful things about MVP's commitment, because we really are committed to local leadership by the most impacted people who know what they need for their communities, for my communities. And the work is is life-changing on an individual scale, on a global scale, on a local scale, every single way possible. And so right now, we're asking for people to give unrestricted if possible, because we need these rapid response funds to be shifted to the ground as soon as possible, for whatever it's needed, for whatever our groups, our local leaders tell us, this is the emergency we need help with right now. And that kind of freedom to dream big, to dream bigger than anybody could have thought possible, and to change the world on that scale, we want to be there for our partners. There's a lot of different ways to give. Some of it can be tax deductible. Some of it can be to different funds. But right now, the most powerful thing you can do is give unrestricted, so that we can give to others and fill in the gaps wherever they're needed. So go to movement.vote and give if you can. I just, again, want to thank our speakers speaking from the States and really sharing the amazing work happening on the ground. And this isn't stuff that happened just for one election. And that's the most powerful thing. Desmond's been doing this work for decades, I think. I mean, like, just, it is lifetimes of work. And one of my mentors in grassroots work, that came from the grassroots side, once we were having a really tough time, and she said, yeah, it is a really hard day and a really hard week and a really hard year and a really hard century, but the work continues. And that's what we're doing right now. That's what we're trying to support right now on a national scale. And with that, I want to shift it over to our future. We're going to be talking about youth organizing and our student vote strategies. And we love Roxana through her work with Student Power Network. She's helping build just a movement of students, and together can win sweeping changes. And really, we're watching the next generation rise to power. And Student Power Networks is helping make that happen, campus by campus, state by state. So I'm going to turn it over to Roxana right now.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And thank you, everybody. Happy National Voter Registration Day. It's an honor personally as a Floridian to follow Desmond and Eric and Elizabeth speaking. Got a lot of Floridians on our national team. Actually, I think we can stay on the first slide just for a little bit, so I can give you all some context about the future generations that are rising to pick up this fight and continue it, not just in this election, but beyond. So hi, everybody. My name is Roxana Borzui. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently serving as the National Director of Student Power Network. And Student Power Network is excuse me, an MVP incubated and funded organization that is an entirely youth-run organizing network across this country. Currently, we have core partners in 5 states, which are New Hampshire, Virginia, Florida, Michigan, and Nevada. And we have youth-led vote mob programs in 3 states, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Maine. So we're covering all the key battleground and Senate race states. And beyond that, with Liwana Thomas, the director of Vote Mob, and at MVP, and our national partners like the Alliance for Youth Action and the Youth Engagement Funds, our scope and our reach to young people spans other states, including Arizona, Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, doing that work of filling in gaps and building a youth ecosystem and a true movement. And one of the reasons why MVP currently houses the Student Power Network is because young voters can be the margin of victory in almost any election. So Gen Z alone, which is 18 to 23-year-olds, I know we get our definitions different sometimes around who qualifies as Gen Z, but in terms of 18 to 23-year-olds, they make up roughly 15 million voters, which is about 10% of the eligible voting population. And on a daily basis, I really ask myself, are we doing enough to mobilize this 15 million person voting bloc to access their vote? Because like I said, we have an opportunity to not just affect this election, but be the progressive wave for decades to come in this country to build a progressive infrastructure from local elections all the way to the top. And there's a lot of challenges to turning out youth voters. Some of them are very like traditional challenges. Currently, about 44% of young voters are registered as independents. And because, you know, we're younger, our phone numbers change all the time, our addresses change all the time. And it's really difficult for young voters to be reached by traditional ways. So only about less than half of young voters have been reached by a candidate or a party by phone and by email, excuse me, and more than 2/3 of them have never even received a campaign phone call. And that's mostly because these voter files are outdated. And at Student Power Network, we take this as an opportunity because we know we can reach young voters because we have the local, the communal connections to them. And then came COVID, came this pandemic that we're all experiencing in very different ways. And the way that this affects young voters is in quite unique ways. So if we can go to the next slide, I just want to show that our typical strategy is really meeting young people where they are. We collect pledges and register students to vote in person on campus through, you know, tabling or events, and make sure to follow up with them throughout their semesters to make sure that they go vote. And this is no longer possible with the pandemic because students may or may not be on campus and they may not know how long they'll be on campus. So at Student Power Network, the way that we're using this as an opportunity is to bring it all virtual, and through our vast relational organizing programs, we're making sure that we're individualizing this decision tree of where students should be registered to vote, how they should vote, and what is the safest way, most reliable way for them to do that, and how can we track that on our back end. And so we're tackling that in 2 ways, which I'll explain to you. The first way is that for students who are on major campuses and are out-of-state students, so campuses with a large out-of-state student population, we are making sure that they're re-registering at their home addresses, at their permanent addresses, so that a loved one or family or friend can forward their ballot in case that their campus closes, so they'll still be able to access their vote, because we're assuming that universities, in the same way that they handled the beginning of the pandemic, won't be able to rise to the occasion and get students their ballots if they're mailed to the campus post boxes. For students who are, you know, non-traditional students or commuter campuses, which includes community colleges, technical schools, where young people are based in their communities and are likely to not be moving around, we're making sure that they are requesting their vote by mail ballot now so that they're able to get it in time and return it to the election. And we've really created this sophisticated program that lets us track it on our back end and follow up with students at every step of the way. So if you're contacted through our Vote Mob programs, you're gonna receive a pre-filled ballot with your information and a stamp, and we're gonna track it to make sure that your ballot is successfully received by the Department of State. Which is a huge lift because there's just so much confusion for young people who are really excited to exercise their right to vote, most of them for the first time ever. And it's really unfortunate that it's during this pandemic that we're all experiencing. And I just want to wrap up my presentation to you all with a quick story of truly how close the Student Power Network is and how broad our scope reaches. So currently we have a young organizer, her name is Phoebe Dolan, who is running our main Vote Mob program and making sure that we're competitive in the Senate race. We're connecting young people in Maine. to exercise the right to vote. And Phoebe herself was a fellow at the New Hampshire Youth Movement. And the origin story of the New Hampshire Youth Movement is truly that they were a group of friends at the University of New Hampshire back in 2016 who received this small amount of seed funding from Billy, Billy directly himself, and on the condition that they would run the most energetic voter engagement program that they could in that election cycle. And they did so well that MVP continued its funding to what then became the New Hampshire Youth Movement over the past 4 years. And they've grown to be the largest youth mobilizing organization in their state. This past primary, they pledged 12,000 young people to vote. They knocked 20,000 doors of young voters. And Phoebe really came from that program and came with all of their skills. And when it came time for us to fill this gap in Maine and make sure that young people are being connected, because there wasn't really a huge effort in Maine, especially in rural areas, we brought Phoebe on because we knew she had the skills and she had the relationships in Maine. And she's just in the past 3 weeks has connected to hundreds of young people in Maine, most of them in rural areas. And they're doing the work of doing early voting, of voting by mail, and getting connected into this broader youth movement. And I just think that's such a beautiful story of someone to go, a true Mainer, to get this organizing experience in New Hampshire, and then to have her homecoming and be able to save the state, save the Senate, and mobilize young people. So I'm gonna turn it back to Elizabeth, but again, thank you so much for investing in this work, and especially in the youth movement.
Thank you so much, Roxana. So I am always excited to hear from Rima, our Wisconsin State Advisor. The work being done in Wisconsin is so powerful. And so Rima's really going to give us some updates on what's happening in Kenosha, what's happening in Wisconsin. And, you know, for those of you who may remember, Wisconsin was one of the first states to have a major election right in the middle of this pandemic. And in so many ways, it was where the right tested some of the worst of their voter suppression tactics. And yet, it was a place where there were some amazing progressive victories. So Wisconsin is an amazing state, and it is one that has suffered so much this year. So I'm going to pass it to Rima, but first I also want to announce that this is going to be the world premiere of our video that features Mark Ruffalo. So I will pass it along to Rima, and very excited about our world premiere.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I know everyone gets this sneak peek before it goes live. So y'all should feel really excited. Hi again, Rima Ahmed. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the Wisconsin State Advisor. And I know a question atop many people's heads is, what is happening in Wisconsin? What is happening in Kenosha? You know, if you feel a little out of the loop, don't worry. Things are changing every single day. So we're all, you know, adapting. I think in the words of some folks on this call, building the plan as we go. But I'll share some quick updates on just Wisconsin generally, and then we can zoom in on what's happening in Kenosha. So as of at the end of last week, we've had over 1 million absentee ballots requested in Wisconsin, which is just amazing. Ballots started going out this past Thursday, September 17th. And so ostensibly, we've had 46, and we will have 46 election days. And all of our partners all across the state are already in that get out the vote mode for these 46 election days. We also just had a court decision that came out yesterday that will allow voters to have online access to an absentee ballot. So if y'all maybe remember when we had our pandemic election back in April, there were thousands of voters that had requested their absentee ballots but never received it in the mail, or either they never received it or they received it after election day, so it was too late. So we just actually had a decision from the courts yesterday that will allow for individuals who still haven't received their ballots by the end of October to access their ballot online. So this is huge. We're talking about a fail-safe for voters who, for whatever reason, are not comfortable or may not be able to get out to may not be able to get out to early vote or to vote in person on election day. So we know decisions, of course, could be appealed, but for now we're celebrating. I'm really excited about that. But let's talk about Kenosha. And, for folks who may not be aware, right, we, on August 23rd, Jacob Blake was shot 7 times by Kenosha police officers in front of his 4 children. Thankfully, he is alive, he has survived, and yet we know that this highlights issues of police accountability and violence and racial inequality that all over the country our communities are rising up and organizing around. And in Kenosha, it's no different. There's an amazing constellation of organizers and activists that have been coming together to demand justice for Jacob Blake. And we're talking about people who have quit their day jobs, honestly, to be able to organize in the streets. Just yesterday, the Wisconsin Department of Justice released an update on their investigations. And it literally just came out, so I'm going to read a couple of my notes here. But what happened is that the DOJ is appointing a retired Madison police chief to be the independent investigator that supports the Kenosha DA and to assist in making charging decisions. And I think what you're hearing from the ACLU out here, and certainly supported by the family of Jacob Blake and community members, is that we want to see an independent prosecutor that is evaluating what has happened and that will be able to make recommendations on charging. And we want to see the indictment and the firing of the police officers that have been involved. And so the family, activists, organizers are all very united in this call to action. And what they're doing in the meantime is amazing. This coming Sunday is going to be 30 days since the shooting, and they will be hosting a 24-hour rally in honor of Jacob Blake and calling on the community that there's still, there is still work for us to do. Meanwhile, groups are coming together to do voter registration, education, and mobilization. And what we saw is just on Thursday, over 26,000 absentee ballots were prepared and mailed out to Kenosha voters. So it's working, it's happening. And just to give you all a taste, I want to show us this video. Let's take a look at just some scenes from the ground in Kenosha.
Wisconsin's my home state. It's a place where people work hard for what we have, who we are, and what we hold most dear. Now, growing up in Kenosha, I learned to see the best in people, and I've taken that lesson with me my whole life. So when police shot Jacob Blake 7 times in his back in front of his 3 kids, I was heartbroken. And the pain that we went through in the aftermath filled me with such despair. But then I saw how our community responded in such a beautiful way, and I was inspired. Our people lifted each other up. They created opportunities to heal and demand justice. While Trump sought to exploit our pain and sow fear and division, others came to grieve with us. This election is about more than one candidate, though. It's about the movement to change the country for the better. But to do that, we need to support the local grassroots groups in Kenosha and all across Wisconsin who are turning out voters, working for justice, and creating a big, beautiful blue wave this fall. So please join me in donating to Movement Voter Project's Wisconsin Fund at winwisconsin.vote.
All right. Can folks hear me? I was having trouble unmuting. I think, okay, great. Wow, that was, I made a couple edits in the last 24 hours, so seeing it all come together was beautiful. And I just want to echo something that Mark was touching upon. When we give community-led grassroots groups the resources they need, We are supporting change led by the most impacted people who know what's needed in their communities. And so with that in mind, I want to share the Kenosha Organizing Fund. This is a fund that 100% of the donations will go directly to those organizers and activists that are on the ground doing this work. Many of whom they're still in the process of officially setting up their nonprofit organizations. And so MVP was able to come in and say, we're going to fundraise for you all right now because we know that you're doing this work and that it's going to take resources to keep it going, certainly through Election Day, but definitely well beyond, to continue to build power by and for the community folks in Kenosha. So I encourage you to please show up and support because it's going to take all of us showing up for the grassroots if we're going to see real change on Election Day and beyond. And with that, I will turn it over back to Elizabeth. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, Rima, that was amazing. That video was really, really inspiring. And so as Rima was saying, specifically about Kenosha, there is a lot of organizing happening, people quitting their day jobs, people standing up and saying, this is my moment to lead, this is what I'm doing this is what I've decided is my life's work right now. And so we launched the Kenosha Organizing Fund specifically in partnership with Kenosha organizers and moving them the resources needed for advocacy, organizing, community care, voter engagement. 100% of the money raised for the Kenosha Organizing Fund is directed to and advised by Kenosha organizers. And this is what we talk about when we say letting the most impacted people lead. They are leading right now, and they're creating their own organizing movement to the point where this is so emerging and new and powerful, and really turning Kenosha into a place where activism thrives and where people are standing up and saying, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm giving, this is how I'm leading my community. So it's movement.vote/Kenosha if you want to give, winwisconsin.vote if you want to give to all of Wisconsin. And that actually goes to the Kenosha Fund as well. But this one specifically we're lifting up because it is so hyperlocal, it is so community focused, and it is so needed for this amazing work. And so I am going to turn it over to Jamila, our Michigan State advisor. She's going to be talking about defending the election. So we know this year the election might not be decided on election night. And that's why Jamila has been working very closely with the Fight Back Table, which is organizing in states across the country to prepare for the worst in case of a contested election. So I'm going to hand it over to Jamila, who does amazing work as our Michigan State advisor and is really going to talk about what that means.
Hi all. My name is Jamila Martin. I am the movement MVP Michigan State advisor. So I know everybody is wondering what we're going to do on November 4th, as Elizabeth said, if Trump tries to steal the election. So as much as we and our grantees are working tirelessly now to win on November 3rd, we also have to start working to protect that win afterwards. And frankly, you know, we all know this isn't just about protecting our win. This really is about protecting our democracy. So the good news is that I'm hearing people saying things like, this is the most united and coordinated I've ever seen our side be. So there are a handful of national tables that have actually already come together to help lead a contested election strategy. One of these, the Fight Back Table, is focused on states in particular and supporting organizations to create state-specific structures and strategies. So here in Michigan, where I'm based, 2 of the MVP grantees are leading the Fight Back Table effort, but all of our grantees will be participating, along with a really broad cross-section of stakeholders from across the political spectrum, because that's really what it's going to take is a broad, united front. So that means electeds, That means moderate Republicans, that means lawyers, grassroots activists, our suburban communities, our suburban moms, organized labor, and many, many others. So right now, these tables are gaming out the kind of various scenarios that are likely to occur, figuring out where our points of leverage, both locally and nationally, are, and then getting shared agreements from as many people as possible across that broad spectrum that I talked about how we are going to work collectively together to protect the election after November 3rd. So they're also beginning to do things like preemptive public messaging now, to see how much bad behavior on behalf of the administration that we can kind of head off by presenting a strong united front early. And they're helping groups secure their operations against the kinds of infiltration and digital attacks that we know we are likely to expect, and some of which, unfortunately, has already started happening. So different state-specific versions of that are actually happening in every state, in all of our target states. So that's kind of what I'm helping with here in Michigan, but that's happening in every target state across the country. So what all of that means for us here at MVP and for our donors is that we are actually preparing to support our grantees, not just through November 3rd, but all the way to January, if that's what it takes. So there will be a special election protection fund, but frankly, as you've heard a few times on this call, the most helpful dollars right now to support this work are really unrestricted funds so that our groups can focus on winning November 3rd and can also be confident that they will have the resources that they need starting on November 4th. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Elizabeth to introduce the next presenter.
Thank you so much, Jamila. I've just been really blown away by all the speakers and all of the amazing stuff happening on the field, on the ground, youth organizing. Roxana, so innovative. All of us have had to really shift. And so with that, we are going to shift to the Senate. Especially with just the absolutely devastating loss of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The Senate race is so important. There's so much at stake. We have the opportunity to change all of our lives for the better or make our lives much worse. So Regina, our managing director, is here to share more.
Hi, all, and thank you so much, Elizabeth. As Elizabeth just said, I don't probably need to tell anyone on this call how important winning control of the Senate is right now, especially in the wake of RBG passing and the huge Supreme Court fight that's coming up. And we need to win 3 or 4 seats to regain a majority, depending on if we win the presidency and get Kamala there as the tie-breaking vote. And so I'm just going to do a quick update on where things stand right now. There are a lot of exciting races across the country. That's the good news. From Alaska down to South Carolina, amazing things are going on. And we're thinking about the Senate in 3 main buckets. The first bucket has 4 states in it: Arizona, Colorado, North Carolina, and Maine. And these are our best bets to win control of the Senate. Good news, in Arizona and Colorado, which are our most likely states, polling is looking good. Mark Kelly has been polling consistently ahead in Arizona, which is especially critical right now because, as many of you have probably read, if he wins, he will be instated by November 30th, being able to play a role in this Supreme Court fight. In Colorado, Hickenlooper is also currently narrowly leading in the polls there in Colorado, and similar situations in North Carolina and Maine. And those 2 states in particular are really the current toss-ups that we absolutely have to close the deal on if we're going to get to 50 votes plus Kamala for that tiebreaker. Right now, Dems in both North Carolina and Maine are polling slightly ahead and hopefully can be pushed over the top by efforts that you've heard Jillian talk about in North Carolina and Roxana talk about happening in Maine with the youth vote, which are super exciting. And then we go to our second bucket of states, where these states are really our next best chance to get at least 51 Dems in the Senate. And for these, we're looking at Montana and Iowa. And this is so critical because without having 51, without having a clear majority, governing power in the Senate is a lot more challenging. And we're not safe having to rely on Dems like, say, Manchin and others. So getting some of the folks in these second kind of tier Senate seats are really, really critical. The good news here is the gold standard Des Moines Register poll just came out in Iowa, and it has the Democrat Greenfield ahead of Ernst there right now, which is extremely encouraging. And Bullock in Montana is polling neck and neck with current Senator Daines there. And then we have a third bucket as well, which is really a group of long shots, but long shots where we have phenomenal organizing going on in all of these states where we have to invest. And so we have our eyes on a couple of dark horse races, specifically Georgia, Alaska, and South Carolina. And I have to say, in South Carolina, Jamie Harrison there is mounting a phenomenally impressive campaign against Lindsey Graham. And things are, these are all uphill battles at the end of the day, but the Senate is absolutely within our reach. And there's potential to take a powerful majority there. And so this is where the map stands right now. We have 42 days to change that. And as always, MVP is doing this through funding groups in these states, from groups like Native Peoples Action in Alaska to Student Action in Iowa. We're building up these organizations now and for the long term to get control over this Senate again, which we all know is so critical moving forward. And I will pass it back to Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I am really heavily invested in the Senate. Especially being in Florida and seeing how, anyway, I don't even want to talk about our senators right now. I want to move on to more exciting things like donor organizing. So we're going to hear from a couple of different members of our donor organizing team, where we have amazing events you can join. We have, we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into our grassroots fundraising model, and there's so much left to do. If you like this briefing, there's going to be plenty of other times that you can join and be in connection with our donor organizers, with speakers, and I will just pass it along to Naomi.
Hi, everyone. Can you see and hear me? Okay, looks good. It's so good to be on this call with you all. I love seeing all the familiar faces, and I love seeing all the faces of folks I haven't gotten a chance to meet yet. This is a pretty incredible group of folks who have done a pretty incredible thing, right? Together, we've raised $75 million for these groups, and you're hearing today about some of the impact it has. It's really outstanding work. Over 22,000 people have given through MVP this cycle. That's amazing. That's a lot of people. That doesn't even count the many of you who are also volunteering for us with a lot of your time. So I just want to thank you. We also have a ton of new folks coming in every day. We've had at least 5-fold increase in people coming out of the woodwork and saying, "Is it too late? I want to give right now." Most of them, some of them are folks who are maybe on this call who are coming back, who've already given and say, can I put in some more money? The answer is yes, you can put in some more money. And a lot of them are brand new to us. So we are working as quickly as we can to bring in the money and get it out to the groups. And that increase in traffic is another part of why we're really urging folks to give directly to our unrestricted, just our unrestricted budget, and not ask for too many specifications. But it's really thanks to all of you that this is happening, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. Our donor organizing staff and volunteers are incredibly creative and dedicated, and folks are doing all sorts of stuff that can really serve as touch points for folks to get involved who haven't yet, and for the people who couldn't make it to this call, or for whom this call isn't a great fit, to learn more about MVP. So we have MVP 101, which happens every month. It's a half an hour quick workshop. It's a great place to send folks who you think might be interested and would have some questions and want to learn a little bit more. We've got a bunch of artists organizing on Instagram. Textiles for MVP is the hashtag you can search. So they're each auctioning off their own work, and I think they've raised $19,000 so far. We've got an impact investing virtual roadshow. We've got a concert series. We've got an author event coming up with Louise Erdich and Ann Patchett that over 1,000 people have already signed up for. We have a film screening and talk back of the incredible film Dress Rehearsal. We've got alumni events happening for a bunch of different schools. All this stuff is up on our website at movement.vote/events, and I really encourage you to go check it out. And I especially urge you to go check it out because many of you came to MVP originally through events, through our house parties. We are still hosting house parties, but we're really encouraging folks, rather than at this point in the cycle, if you're like, oh, maybe I should host another house party, you could, and that would be great. But I really want to encourage you first to think about, is there something already happening to which you could invite people? Alternatively, we started an incredible new program that I really want to put out huge thanks to my colleagues, Alex, Lisa Beam, Aram, Rain, and Tom for putting together, called the Grassroots Donor Organizing Program. If you were part of something called the Virtual Donor Organizing Program, this is the public launch of that same thing that we're now calling Grassroots Donor Organizing. And it's a way for anyone who's interested in raising money for MVP to sign up. You get your own link where people can give online, your own Facebook things to share, Twitter, all this stuff, and you can take it and run with it and do whatever is the right thing for you and your community. If you want to fundraise by email, if you want to do a 5K, whatever it is that you want to do, this way you're empowered to do it, and you don't have to clear it with anybody, you just run. And this all will raise money unrestricted for MVP, which is the thing that groups need the most right now. I know a lot of people really want to volunteer their time. We have a way for folks, we have a list for folks to volunteer outside of this. This is the best way you can volunteer for MVP. And we also have lots of ways for folks to volunteer directly, to do everything from phone calls and postcards that's been shared in the chat already of groups that MVP recommends for donating your time. Can we have the next slide up, please? Yeah, so if you want to give right now, this is the way to do it. Go online, give here. I think we can get to $100 million. I really do. Y'all have gotten us this far already. And you know, the election's 40 days away, but that means we have 40 days to do it. So with that, I'm gonna give it back to Billy. Thank you all.
Thank you, Naomi, and thank you to everyone on our donor team and everyone who spoke. Like, oh my God, I'm just sitting here like quelling about how incredible everyone is who we work with, our partners and donors and donor organizers and everyone on the team. So let's open it up for Q&A in the chat. There are still 217 people on this call after an hour and after so many people wrote to us and couldn't get in at the beginning. So thank you. We're just like, our hearts are just full with all of your love and support. So let's take some questions. And actually, Daria, my dear old friend Daria, who I haven't seen in years, asked a question about Milwaukee that Rima started answering. That's still very much on my mind. Rima, if you want to speak to that more. Ditto, I think people might be interested to know more about, yeah, so let's see. Texas, there's a question, Texas. Is Kato on the call, our Texas state advisor? Feel free to jump in and talk Texas, or Myrna if you're there. We have the two people who kind of run the nerve center of our state program are both based in Texas. So, oh yes, and people are talking on the chat about the Vassar event tonight. People are organizing college alumni events, which have been enormously successful. They've been raising like $100,000 a pop with not even that much work. It's an incredible new model. So, someone want to jump in? I'm trying to filibuster so some smart person on our team can jump in and add some color to this.
This is Rima. I can share a little bit more about the Milwaukee group. So yeah, Wisconsin is a critically important state at play. And I just saw an article, I think it was like in The Guardian at the beginning of this week, that talked about how important Milwaukee is specifically to the election this cycle. So yes, Trump is working very hard out here. Certainly does have an office where he's doing specifically outreach to Black voters. And the thing that I'll go back to is who are those trusted individuals and communities? Who are the organizations that when the pandemic hit and when there was mass confusion about where to vote, who to vote, is there even an election still? Who were voters looking to? These are the partner groups that we are working with. We're talking about Block, we're talking about LIT, Metcalf Park Community Bridges, African American Roundtable. These are just the groups that I could name off the top of my head. But we've got over 30 partners that we're working with all across the state, and many of them in Milwaukee and Southeast Wisconsin. And so, I can say that those groups are doing both relational voting programs, they're doing digital outreach. LIT especially has some really amazing creative organizing and cultural organizing that they're doing on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. So we're doing that outreach too. So, yeah, if you have other specific questions, it's going to be hard, and the groups are here for all that work. Oh, and I think I said this in the chat, but I don't know if folks caught it, but there still is a gap specifically around traditional mail. Trump is hitting all voters in the state pretty hard. And so, that is one area that we're still, just one, there's many more, but one area I would uplift is that we're still trying to get more resources to do some traditional mailers to key voters.
Yeah, we're in this part of the cycle. And Rima, you can also say more about this. And I'm also seeing a question about Latinx voters from Jennifer Lyman. But we're in this part of the cycle where a lot of money is moving really fast, and some of the bigger, more well-known groups are starting to finally get their gaps filled. I mean, it should have happened months ago, but they're starting to get their gaps filled. And so a lot of where the gaps I'm predicting are going to be a week or two from now are a lot of smaller groups, emerging groups, and also kind of like last minute expansion strategies. Like for instance, there was an API network in Pennsylvania that had a modest plan. We helped them fill their gap, and Katie, our state advisor, was talking with them about like, hey, is there more you can do? Like, we think we can get you more money. And now they figured out all these other things they could do, because all these groups have been in a scarcity situation where they've never had resources to do what they really want to do, so now, they went from us filling their gap to now they have, $200,000 or $300,000 new gap for the ways that they're expanding their work. So that's a lot of the kind of unseen work that our state advisors is talking with these emerging groups and helping them to dream bigger, to expand their plans, to realize they can use all these tech tools that we help them get access to on the back end. And I know, Rima, Jamila, I know Jillian isn't here with us on the call anymore, but anyone else want to speak to like some of the nitty gritty of what's happening in your states? And I also just want to shout out all the great donor organizing that's happening on the chat. People are talking about organizing campuses and everything else. Thank you all donor organizers making it happen. Go ahead, Rima, Jamila, or anyone else want to speak to that? And Rima, if you're talking, you might be on mute. And Eric, I think people are probably going to be really curious about how it's going with the fines and fees, raising money for the fines and fees, and kind of like the nitty gritty of that. Looking for other questions. Oh yeah. So, okay, in terms of Latinx organizing, Rima was responding to that in the chat.
Yeah, I can say a few for folks who maybe can't see the chat. Yeah, one of our leading groups out here, Voces de la Frontera, statewide group based in Milwaukee, but with chapters across the state and doing outreach to immigrant Latinx voters. You know, their bread and butter is relational organizing. Well before this became, you know, the buzzy way that we talk about how to build power and win elections, they've been doing the relational work. And so their main program this election cycle is their Vocero program, which is all about leveraging personal relationships and tapping into those networks to be able to register people, educate them about the election, and then turn them out to vote. And I think what's really critical to acknowledge here is that we're organizing in a way that we've never had to organize before in a pandemic. And so we can't rely on those in-person events and activities and rallies. And so leaning into the personal relationships is how we're going to win. In addition to that, I do know that, you know, Voces is working us alongside other partners to get more digital ads in English and Spanish and other languages on social media. And is actually also working with the C4 table and other partners to make sure that we're calling up the thousands and thousands of immigrant voters across the state, and leaning into also new immigrants, people who have not been able to vote, or who are new citizens, sorry, not new immigrants, new citizens since 2016, for whom this will be the first election cycle that they'll be voting. So they're doing outreach to all these different subgroups, if you will, within the immigrant and Latinx communities to make sure that they have all the information they need, they know how to get out the vote, and they follow those steps, right? Because we know that when it comes to voting by mail too, there are multiple steps to be able to eventually do the thing. And so we're relying on those personal relationships to make sure folks actually follow through.
Yeah. Ooh, God, I wish Mirna Cotto or Corina, our Arizona State Advisor, were on the call, who are like much more steeped in Latinx and immigrant organizing, certainly than I am. I think you know, one of the most inspiring things I've heard, and you know, please invite anyone else, you know, some of the Florida folks to jump in on this, is there was a really powerful campaign in Arizona a couple of years ago called Basta Arpaio, to get out Sheriff Arpaio. And there's a multi-state Latinx group, Mi Familia Vota, that has taken that up, and their campaign is Basta Trump. And so they're building on that energy around Arpaio and translating it to the fight around Trump. And some of the other groups, some other groups around the country have kind of picked up that messaging, which I think is some of the you know, some of the smartest messaging. Yeah, anyone else want to jump in? I know Florida, you know, I mean, obviously the Latinx vote in Florida is so complex and heterogeneous. I don't know if Elizabeth or Eric want to speak to
I can talk to some of the work. Yeah. You know, there's really two, I mean, large efforts and many smaller efforts to both persuade and mobilize the Latino community in Florida. And the persuasion part is important because, as folks may know, Florida's Latinx community is very, very diverse, including a historically conservative Cuban American community. You can basically break the Florida electorate, Latinx electorate, up into three parts, about 1/3 Cuban, 1/3 Puerto Rican, and 1/3 the whole rest of the Latino diaspora. So Nicaraguans, Colombians, Venezuelans, Dominicans, you know, the list goes on and on, Peruvians, the list goes on and on and on. And of course, you know, like I said, Donald Trump knows he needs to win Florida. He has paid a lot of attention to especially trying to get the Venezuelan community up more on his side, and certainly solidify the Cuban community behind him. That's why you hear him talking about socialism almost every other word in the State of the Union and on the campaign trail. You know, I will make a prediction today that when Trump announces his the replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg later this week, that it's one of the front runners is someone, a Cuban judge out of Miami, and that's very much a political play from him. So Poder Latinx is running a large, kind of virtual program through phones and texting and relational organizing. And then the Florida for All program, which I talked about in the chat, is a coalition of 8 organizations, 8 power building organizations who are organizing in all parts of the state, in different constituencies. There's Dream Defenders who organizes youth. There's Faith in Florida organizes through churches. There's New Florida Majority and Organized Florida organized in different regions of the state. There's Florida Immigrant Coalition, SCIU is a big union as part of it, Planned Parenthood, are all coming together to try in running the largest electoral program at scale in the state of Florida. And a major, major component of that is trying to get out and have persuasion conversations and get out the vote conversations with the Latino community. The persuasion conversations tend to be focused in South Florida, Miami, where there's a heavy concentration of Cubans and Venezuelans and Nicaraguans who also have a history that makes them kind of be a little bit more right-leaning in Miami. And then in Central Florida, you have Puerto Ricans, you have Mexicans all through the state, who lean a little bit more on our side and definitely are more of a get out the vote, push. So those are great organizations. There's many others like Mi Familia Vota and many other kind of small community organizations that are also doing great work. And it's going to take all of us because, like I said, Florida is a coin flip every single year.
Thank you. And I do want to mention to folks in the chat too, if you want to hear more about Arizona and fighting Arpaio and like fighting, the Papers, Please law. And there's a lot of amazing organizing on the Latinx community side that grew in Arizona out of some of those early fights. And, between that and some of the amazing Black-led organizing happening and some of the amazing indigenous organizing happening in the Navajo Nation, how that has really turned Arizona from what was a very, very bright red state to now a state that is very much in play, that is a very much purple, maybe even leaning blue state, depending on how this election goes. You can go to movement.vote. We have a short film that's specifically about winning Arizona that is on our website, and the link is in the chat as well, so you can see it and share it on social media. We started launching our short 90-second version and 60-second versions online on our Facebook, on our Instagram, on our Twitter. Please share. We want everybody to know what happened in states like Florida and states like Arizona. We really want to see what happens and how groups coming together, especially, it's really funny in that video, they really talk about how, the people there who are leading organizations are honestly talking about how, 10 years ago, I got into my first fight, my first protest, my first everything because of what was happening in a state legislative fight. So we're really seeing emerging and growing leaders and how they're just transforming states and transforming the country.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you everyone who joined us. And, as we go into these final days, just keep all of these organizers in your heart, and they're out organizing on the front lines, and we got to organize everyone we know with them. Our fates are connected. Our fates are connected. My children growing up in Massachusetts are going to have their future determined by the organizing in Florida and in all of these other states. So we're all in this together. We're building this community. Whatever happens, we are going to build this stronger and create the future that we need to create. So thank you everyone so much for everything you're doing, and go team.
Thank you, everyone.